Olson, the founder and the host of the Best Mom Products show and podcast, where mompreneurs share their adventures in business. Today, I'm excited to be talking with PR consultant Raluca State, mother of 2 young ones here in San Diego, California. She's worked with brands like Petunia Picklebottom, Tom's, Barbie, and Big City Moms. An avid fan of Gwyneth Paltrow, her blog, Would Gwyneth Do, strives for style in the land of sippy cups and seesaws. Today, we'll get her insight on how PR is changing, being a frequent contributor to the Huffington Post, and our top do-it-yourself tips for the bootstrapping mompreneur. Welcome, Raluca. You started your consultancy in about 2008. Can you talk a little bit about how PR has changed from then to now and kind of where you see it going?
Yes, happy to. I actually think that PR in general is at a really important crossroads right now with the strength and obviously the continued growth of social media and how brands are looking to combine what we call traditional PR and traditional media relations with modern day. And when I speak to traditional PR, to back it up, PR is, my job is really about acting as a channel for a brand or a product or a person or a place or a thing to interact with the public. And typically that means, in old school sense, you get them coverage. So the things that you read about in your daily newspaper, in your People magazine, in your Red Book that you hear about on the radio or you see on CNN, many of those stories are placed by public relations representatives or teams. And traditionally that worked. You'd read about something in a magazine, you'd read out and you'd buy it, and the placement would be a success. Now it's completely changed. And while the traditional part of the puzzle is still a really important one, with technology and bloggers and social media and influencer engagement, PR has just evolved so much as a game. And particularly in the past 5 years since I launched my consultant business, you have to think about it from a 360-degree approach. You can't just consider a placement in the New York Times to launch your business. You need to be engaging with people from every different arena.
Okay, great. Interesting. So when you say that, you mean like social media, and the role of a PR firm now, I've noticed too, is they do a lot of marketing. So I kind of feel like it's almost a blurred line. Do you go to a marketing firm to do your SEO and you go to PR for everything else? It's a little bit confusing as to what people offer, I find. Is that something that you see as well?
Yeah, and I think it depends on your brand or your product and what your goals are. There's big old PR agencies that charge a ton of money every month and do fantastic things, and they can encompass everything from product placement to branding to SEO to traditional PR to crisis communications to everything under the sun. What I think is the important thing is to figure out, what does your brand need? Is your presence mainly online? Are you an e-tailer, or are you, a mom and pop shop where you need to get local people into your store? It really all depends on your brand, your goals, who's your target consumer. I think the very first thing that everybody has to think about before even thinking about PR or marketing is, what is this brand and who's the target consumer that's going to move the needle for me in terms of sales and buzz and everything. And then you figure out how to best market to that person. I do think that a good PR person needs to have a little bit of everything in there. If they know how to pitch media, but they haven't been on Twitter in 3 years, it doesn't really make sense in this day and age. If they don't have sort of, a creative opinion or something like that for your brand, they don't need to be a creative director. I'm not a graphic designer by any means. I'm not an SEO specialist, but I'm well enough versed in those areas that I can consult with my clients or put them in touch with the right people to consult with them so that the messaging is cohesive across the board. I think that in this day and age, a PR is so far beyond the media placements that you get. It has to be all about your brand's messaging, branding, voice, all of that, and how you engage with consumers online, offline, everything.
Okay, so is that what you do mostly for your clients then? You've worked with, Barbie, Petunia Picklebottom, Tom's, some big players, and in the kid and baby product space as well. So can you take me through something like maybe you would do for one of them?
Sure. Well, I can give you some examples with Petunia Picklebottom in particular. This is a client that I had the pleasure of working with. They're a great team based up in Ventura County, California. And it's a mom who founded the company, although she founded it before she had her children, which I always thought was fascinating. She saw a gap in the diaper bag market for chic diaper bags that, women would be excited to carry and that were fashionable and functional. And she saw that before she even had her own kids, which I loved. And they basically came to us because they were on, I think it's year 13 in business possibly. And clearly they were one of the leaders of their industry. They were a pioneer in that market and they did a really great job with it. But what happened over 10 plus years is that other people came along and all of a sudden their competitor set grew and they were fighting for retail, space and fighting for attention and, going up against other brands that were doing a really great job.
What was that change that they were looking to make and how did you help them in that regard?
It was really just getting back out there in front of key editors. And when I say key editors, it's really the people in New York, some in Los Angeles, of course, but primarily in New York that work with the top lifestyle publications, the top magazines, the top blogs, the top websites, and just sort of reintroducing the brand to them, and making sure that they were top of mind when it came to stories about that segment of the market. And also in developing a stronger profile for the company's founder and creative director, who, again, like I said, is a mom of two. She has impeccable style. She's wildly creative and super fun and a very smart businesswoman. And no one had really taken a look at her story. I think that that's a really important part of a good PR campaign today is to have a story behind your product and your brand and to be able to connect with your audience on that personal level. Because in this day and age, we can't buy everything from mom and pop, artisan shop kind of developers, but when there is a personal aspect to any brand or product or even place that we interact with, I think it goes a long way.
Like the PR industry is just across the board inconsistent. So it makes it very difficult for, a mom starting out or an entrepreneur starting out to decide which consultant, which PR firm, what do I really need and what actual results will they produce? What should somebody expect from a results perspective?
It's a gray matter sort of question. PR is not advertising. So you cannot pay me XX amount of dollars and I can say, this is the placement you're going to get. This is when you are going to get it. And this is what it's going to do for your business. It's just not an exact science. And that's what we always like to say. If you want guaranteed results, there's a lovely advertising contact that you can contact and run a full page ad. It's going to cost you 10 to 20 times more, but that's the route to go. I think that what you can do is get aligned on your targets and what really matters to your client. And I think that you can guarantee your best efforts. And I know that that's not what a lot of people want to hear, but sometimes your best efforts results in a half page in the Wall Street Journal and your business blowing up overnight. And then in another month, it may be a little bit slower. It's a wave. It's absolutely a wave. But I think what you need to do is find somebody that fits in with your budget. I don't believe in pay for play. I'll put that out there right away. I've had people that have come to me, they want to pay per placement. It's just simply not a smart business model for myself or for you as far as I'm concerned. Because if I want to charge you the rate that Wall Street Journal is going to get you or the rate that a small mom blog in Orange County is going to get you, how do I differentiate, right? And at what point, I tend to value my work based on my time and relationships and the process that it takes to get there. And it's very, very hard to do that on a per placement.
Someone expect to pay? I mean, you don't have to give me, if you're open to sharing your rate, that's great. If not, what's typical, do you think, for like a PR consultant versus like a big PR firm?
Well, most big PR firms won't, in my experience, at least in the Los Angeles market, it's a $10,000 minimum retainer per month, which is a huge investment. Most of the big agencies I've either worked with or for play in that ballpark.
Okay.
And that's great for a big brand that needs it, which was a big motivating factor in me leaving big agency life and starting my own consultancy 5 years ago, was that I was seeing some really great brands coming through the door that just couldn't afford it, but they were still a really viable PR client. And there was a lot of great stuff to work with. And I felt like those things were just missed opportunities.
Okay.
So that's big agency life. The consultancy side of it, it just varies so much. typically most of the people I know in this business like to work off either a project fee or a retainer fee. I don't know very many that work hourly. I do not work hourly.
Right.
So it's either a monthly retainer, and like I said, it's usually a minimum of 6 months, ideally, contract, and or a project fee. So if you're hiring me to do one event, for instance, with Big City Moms, I handled all the press around their Los Angeles and San Francisco events. That was one project fee for those 2 events that sort of encompassed everything. Any contract that you sign, typically there's a 30-day sort of out clause for both sides. So if I'm not really feeling it or you're not really feeling it, typically you can walk away with a 30-day notice.
Okay.
And you should always have that in a contract because things happen. And if it doesn't work out, it's an investment of time, it's an investment of money, it's an investment of resource. And that's another big thing that I think brands need to realize is PR is work on your end too.
So for the mom entrepreneur out there who is working maybe with somebody to refine their messaging and their angles, and that's the type of stuff that's so important to get down. And they get that stuff down and then they say, okay, you know what? I'm the best person to tell my story. I'm going to go pitch myself. I've worked with a PR person. I've got it down. What are some things that they could do because, they're bootstrapping it to go ahead and pitch themselves?
But if you see that Jane Smith writes a column in, Parents Magazine every single month that would be perfect for your product, you've got to figure out how to get in touch with Jane Smith. If you have a product, I think that you need to send it, but I think that you need to be prepared that it's sitting on a mountain of other products in their office. But it's very, very hard to follow up or to, engage further without at least having said, I sent you the sample, hope you had a chance to, hope it landed on your desk, hope you had a chance to find it, et cetera, et cetera. Another tip I will say for people who are starting is befriend assistants. There are a lot of assistant editors. There are a lot of even interns, associate editors who are sort of lower on the totem pole, and they get stories placed. They absolutely get stories placed. They're easier to get in touch with because they're not the editor-in-chief. Do not go to the editor-in-chief ever for anything. Look at the masthead, if I'm speaking about magazines specifically, which is, the front page and the front of the book that says everybody that works there, and pick someone a little lower down that list, and do your research. See what these people are saying on their Twitter. See what they have on Pinterest. See what their Instagram account looks like. Figure out if they're the right aesthetic for you and for your brand, and then figure out the best way to approach them.
Oh, those are definitely some good tips. I think that, as people probably get it, if they're going to do it themselves, it's very time consuming. So
it's very time consuming.
Right.
And again, a big part of the reason you're paying a PR person is for their relationships, that their emails are kind of getting sorted out through the thousands of emails that these editors get every day.
Right.
You hear it continuously. And like you said, now they're being pinged on social media on top of it. And there's a big, I don't want to say backlash, but there's a big debate right now in the PR industry about how much are you supposed to follow up with these people, with the editors? Like they're complaining that they're so swamped with PR pitches that they can't do their job. And, so my response to that is sort of twofold. I think that again, you want to find someone who has the relationships that you need. But even if they don't, you want to find somebody who understands the process. And that's what I tell some clients that come to me. I might not necessarily have every single diaper bag writer, editor, in my back pocket. And I didn't when I started with Petunia Picklebottom, to be frank. But I know how to approach them. I know sort of how to dance the dance and walk the walk and get my pitch, whether it's an email or a call or whatever, sort of to stand out through the clutter.
Okay.
And I think that is a really important thing to keep in mind. That said, I also think, and this might be shooting myself in the foot, that when a CEO or a founder of a company goes out with their own story, it's incredibly impactful. So if you can find somebody to help you craft your story, develop your sort of messages, figure out the right place to put it, and then you want to try to get it out there yourself, I think it's worth the effort.
You're an amazing writer. I want to talk about both the writing you do for your blog, What Would Gwyneth Do? And also maybe first dive into Huffington Post.
I've also contributed to Huffington Post Women and Huffington Post Weddings. And the way that came about actually was via my blog. An editor over there who I was friends with from the PR side of things was a follower of the blog and had seen a story that I wrote a while ago now. I can't remember exactly when, entitled I Don't Believe in Date Night. So she saw it on my blog first and came to me right away and said, this is a fantastic piece. Are you interested in having it published? And of course I was. My background is writing. I'm a journalism. Yeah, I got my degree in journalism. I kind of fell into PR actually when I wanted to be a writer. So it's always been something that I dreamed of doing for my career. So Huffington Post picked up that story and it went pretty viral and it got a lot of attention, and it basically just got me in front of their parents' editors. And I think Weddings ran that story first as well. And from there, they just really liked my style, and they really liked, my approach to sort of modern day motherhood and parenting and working motherhood. And so they just asked me to keep contributing, and now I just contribute anything I want to, and they choose whether or not to publish it, and knock on wood, they publish most of the things that I contribute. I'm going to tell you the honest truth and say no. Okay. I've had two moments. So the blog is really, it is inspired by Gwyneth, obviously, Gwyneth Paltrow, but it's really a sort of lifestyle diary, if you will, of modern day working motherhood. And so it's a little bit of parenting, it's a little bit of personal anecdotes, it's some fashion, it's some beauty, it's some home decor, and there's, a little bit of sort of the Gwyneth Paltrow aesthetic sprinkled throughout, just because I do find her an inspiration on various levels for modern day mothers. When I started writing for Huffington Post, my biggest day on the blog at that point had been the time that Gwyneth Paltrow actually retweeted it.
Wow.
One day it kind of caught her eye and she retweeted the blog, and that day was a big day for the blog. My second biggest day, or actually the day that ended up trumping that, was when Huffington Post ran that date night story, but it ran on AOL.
Oh.
Which is so funny because nobody really thinks about AOL anymore, but apparently there's a lot of people on it. The AOL numbers were the biggest I think I've ever seen from having the story on the front. It was on the homepage, granted. It was a pretty nice placement on AOL. So what the Huffington Post stories and work has done for me is it's definitely brought me new readers, but I wouldn't say it's brought me a number that's skyrocketed my readership. But I think it's brought new readers who have become loyal readers, which has been really important to me. Mm-hmm. People that are coming from outside of my personal network, so it's not friends or family or friends of friends or Facebook friends or whatnot, are coming and they're sticking around. Because that reader who's on HuffPost Parents is obviously pretty dialed into, life as a modern day mother and specifically a working mother. And, so there's a lot of loyalty that comes from the Huffington Post readers. But when I have a story on there, it's rare because you have to remember they're reading the story on there. So even though there's a link, I believe, to the blog and to my Twitter account, they don't need to come to it to read that story. So it's sort of asking for another level of engagement, whereas they can just read me on Huffington Post. They can follow me on Huffington Post too, so that Right. They always get my posts on there. So closing that loop of having them actually direct back to the blog is not so much of a win.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, I think that I am so interested in people's stories that I am just one of those people who always goes to, if I read something interesting, I always want to know more about that person and what they're doing.
I think for me is obviously, I'm looking to incorporate more writing into my work and to sort of not transition my PR career, but evolve it to do more writing, both on a marketing and PR side of things. So copywriting and marketing writing and things like that. And then obviously more personal writing. And so the Huffington Post is a really great way to pull together a portfolio for that.
Thank you. I want to kind of wrap up with one of your favorite quotes. I read it and it just struck me. So go ahead.
Doubt kills more dreams than failure ever will.
Wow.
And this one, it just says it all, in my opinion. I mean, we have to be our biggest cheerleader. You have to be your biggest cheerleader. You have to believe in yourself. You have to believe in what your goals are. You have to understand that they may not happen overnight, but it doesn't mean that they're never going to happen. And I think that so many people, and particularly women and particularly moms, put so much doubt in themselves and so much fear and so much insecurity that they don't even go for it. And I'm a big believer, and I've really realized in the past couple of years, there's no harm in just going for it. And it may not work out 9 times out of 10, but the one time it does work out is going to be worth it.
I'm the type of person who goes for it, fails, gets back up, goes for it, fails. Because there's something to learn in each one of those experiences. And each time I believe you truly get closer to that home run, hopefully. So, so I want to say thank you for your time and your insight. I know that this is just something extra that you did. You have plenty of clients, so I appreciate it. And I'll have the links to some of Raluca's favorites and blog in the show notes, so you could check out what would Gwyneth do. If you enjoyed this interview, please go to our website and sign up for a newsletter. We just share special expert tips in there. And or you can feel free to share on social media. We love that. So thank you. Head over to bestmomproducts.com.